Class is now in session. I am Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing some trade news for the San Jose Sharks. The deadline is less than 24 hours away. Time is ticking, and the Sharks have many assets that they would like to part with. The easiest one to get rid of, and the one that they just did, is Anthony Duclair, who has been traded to the Tampa Bay Lightning along with a 7th-round pick in exchange for a 3rd-round pick, as well as defenseman Jack Thompson. Now, just taking a look at this one initially, the first impression of this deal is that it ends up being a bit of an underpay for the Lightning. The Sharks didn't perhaps get as much value as they would have liked to see. In terms of just looking at draft capital, the Sharks give up a 7th-round pick in exchange for a 3rd-round pick. However, it must also be remembered that when the Sharks originally acquired Duclair last offseason, it was not just in a 1-for-1 trade for Steven Lorentz, but the Sharks also added in a 5th-round pick at the time, which means, in general, taking a look at the entirety of this movement of Duclair, the Sharks give up a 7th and a 5th in exchange for a 3rd-round pick. That is still a positive for San Jose, don't get me wrong. A 3rd-round pick is definitely better than a combination of a 5th and a 7th, but not by that wide of a margin. Definitely not by the margin that you would expect for a skilled player like Anthony Duclair. However, taking a bit of a deeper look at this trade, there's a couple of points to mention that are very, very important here. The first of which is the player that the Sharks get back in this deal, Jack Thompson, the defenseman here for Tampa Bay. This is not some nobody AHL journeyman, 30 years old, who's not going to play another game. This isn't just a movement to make this trade work on paper in terms of like a contract limit being held up by the Tampa Bay Lightning size. No, that's not the case here. Jack Thompson is only 21 years of age, will actually be turning 22 in a couple of weeks, playing with the minor league team for the Tampa Bay Lightning, Syracuse. He was an AHL All-Star this season. He's got 32 points in 46 games, actually looking like a pretty decent and young defenseman for Tampa, and Lightning fans likely not going to be too happy to see him get traded to San Jose. He'll immediately be added to the Sharks' traffic jam of defensemen, but who knows, with 20 games left here and perhaps more trades to be made somewhere down the line in the next 24 hours, the Sharks may even get Jack Thompson into an NHL game at some point. It will not be his first. He actually did play a game with the Lightning this season, but as I said, he's not just some random nobody that's not going to make any impact for San Jose. Perhaps even 5 years into the future, he could be a major piece for the San Jose Sharks. Who's to say? But another very important piece is not just what they acquired, but what they didn't have to give up, and primarily that comes down to their final salary cap retention slot. Duclair was traded to Tampa Bay with his contract in its entirety, and this is so pivotal because the Sharks only have a single salary retention slot left on their roster. The other two are being filled by both Brent Burns and Erik Karlsson. And Duclair being the highest value asset that the Sharks had, if they were forced to retain salary on his contract, a lot of the other more difficult to move players like Labanc, Hoffman, Kakinen, Barabanov, these players would be significantly more difficult to move on from at that point. So the fact that they're able to get rid of Duclair's $3 million completely to Tampa Bay means there is another possible decent enough deal that the Sharks can make over these next few hours prior to the trade deadline tomorrow. So this actually ends up being, upon taking a deeper look, an okay trade for San Jose. Yes, the draft picks might not be the exact value that Sharks fans were hoping for, but this Jack Thompson player could end up being more valuable than even like a 2nd-round pick, depending on how things pan out for him over these next couple of years. And the flexibility that the Sharks managed to retain, also hugely useful. And so I think this was a nice bit of work here for Mike Grier, especially since when you consider all the way back from last offseason, the Sharks really only had to give up Lorentz, who is not that big of a deal to move on from, and a 5th-round pick, and then also the 7th-round pick here as well. Class dismissed.